My sister demanded I fund her creative journey after she quit her job. I am not even joking. We were sitting at this super expensive sushi spot downtown, and Miley had her phone propped up against the soy sauce bottle, live streaming to maybe 300 people. I thought we were celebrating her promotion at the marketing firm, but then she looked dead into the camera lens with this scary level of seriousness and said, "I am officially resigning from the corporate rat race to pursue my true calling as a full-time lifestyle curator." I almost choked on my spicy tuna roll. I waited for her to laugh or say it was a skit for clout, but she just ended the stream, looked at me and said, "Colby, I feel so free, like a massive weight is lifted." Then the check came. It was $240. She pushed it toward me without even looking at it. I told her I paid last time, and she rolled her eyes and said, "Do not be stingy. I am unemployed now, remember?" I paid it because I did not want to cause a scene in public, but that was just the appetizer for the main course of absolute delusion. We walked out to the parking lot, and she handed me a literal printed invoice from her purse. It was not for the dinner. It was for $5,000. I asked her what the hell this was, and she said it was for her startup costs. She broke it down like she was pitching on Shark Tank. She needed a new Sony camera, a professional ring light, and her rent paid for 2 months while she built her brand. She told me, "Talia said, you would support me because you make good money at your boring tech job, so think of this as an angel investment in my happiness." I looked at her like she had grown a second head. I said, "Miley, are you insane? I am not giving you $5,000 to make TikToks in your bedroom. You need to call your boss back right now and beg for your job before they process your resignation." She looked at me with pure disgust and said, "You are so toxic, Colby. You are just jealous. I am escaping the matrix while you rot in a cubicle." She said, "Look, Talia and I ran the numbers, and if I get 50,000 followers by June, I can monetize, but I need the capital now to look the part. You cannot be a luxury influencer with an iPhone 10. I told her to get an Uber because I was done. I drove home fuming, but by the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone was blowing up. Miley had already called our mom, Tamara, spinning some insane narrative. I got a text from Mom saying, "Colby, why are you crushing your sister's spirit when she is finally taking a risk? You know she is sensitive." I ignored it, but then Miley sent me a voice note saying, "Thanks for ruining my launch day. I hope you feel powerful gatekeeping my success." I realized then that she actually believed her own hype. She genuinely thought I owed her $5,000 just because I have a savings account. I thought that was the end of it, but I woke up the next morning to a notification from my bank. She had tried to charge an Uber Black to my card that was saved on her app from 3 years ago. It was declined, but the audacity was honestly impressive. I called her to scream at her, but she sent me to voicemail. Then I got a text from Dad Leland saying we needed to have a family meeting regarding Miley's future. I knew right then I was about to walk into an ambush. I walked into my parents' house and it felt like a funeral, except the corpse was Miley's common sense. The living room was set up like an intervention, but instead of chairs in a circle for an addict, Miley was sitting on the love seat with a literal poster board presentation propped up on the coffee table. Tamara, my mom, was nervously arranging a plate of cookies that no one was going to eat, and Leland, my dad, was sitting in his recliner looking at the ceiling like he wished he could dissolve into the drywall. I didn't even take my shoes off before I addressed the elephant in the room. I asked Miley why she tried to charge a $70 Uber to a card I haven't used since college. She didn't even flinch. She just took a sip of her iced coffee and said, "Colby, do not bring that negative energy into this space. We are here to manifest abundance, not argue over petty cash." I looked at Dad, waiting for him to step in, but he just sighed and said, "Son, just sit down. Let's hear her out." I sat on the very edge of the sofa because I knew I wasn't staying long. Miley stood up like she was Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone. She tapped the poster board, which was covered in magazine cutouts of Chanel bags, private jets, and random quotes about hustle culture. She said, "Okay, so as you know, my spirit was being crushed in the corporate machinery, and I have decided to pivot. I am building a personal brand centered around luxury aesthetic and high-vibration living." Mom nodded like this made perfect sense. I asked Miley what exactly she was selling. She looked at me with pity and said, "I am selling a lifestyle, Colby. People buy the dream. Talia and I have done the market research. If I post 3 high-quality reels a day for 6 months, the algorithm will pick me up and the sponsorships will flow in. But to make money, you need to look like money. That is why I need seed capital." She turned to the next slide on her board. It was a breakdown of her expenses. It wasn't just the camera and the ring light anymore. She had listed a personal trainer, a membership to a Soho House-style club, and a monthly budget for wardrobe refresh. The total was now closer to $8,000. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a cold, hard laugh that made Mom flinch. I told her that this was the most insane thing I had ever seen, and asked if she planned to pay any of this back. Miley crossed her arms and said, See, this is the scarcity mindset that holds you back. You view money as a finite resource, but I view it as energy. When I make it big, I will buy you a Tesla, but right now I need you to step up as a brother. Then Mom chimed in. She used that soft, guilt-tripping voice she perfected when we were teenagers. She said, Colby, you know Miley has been struggling with her mental health at that office. She was so unhappy. You have that nice job in tech, you have your own house, and you have no dependents. Would it really hurt you to support your sister for a few months while she finds her footing? I looked at Dad again. He finally spoke up, saying, look, we would help her, but our retirement accounts are tied up in the market right now, and we just don't have the liquidity. You are the one with the cash flow, son. It is just a loan. Family helps family. I felt like I was being gaslit by 3 people simultaneously. I told them that enabling this delusion wasn't helping her. It was crippling her. I turned to Miley and asked the question that I knew would detonate the room. I asked her if she had actually resigned, or if she was fired. She got super defensive, her face turning bright red. She said, I resigned, Colby. I walked into my boss's office and told him that his energy was incompatible with my journey and that I was done being a slave to his deadlines. I asked her if she gave 2 weeks' notice. She scoffed and said, notice is for people who intend to come back. I burned the bridge because I needed to make sure I could never retreat to safety. It is called committed action. My jaw hit the floor. I looked at Dad and said, do you hear this? She didn't just quit. She scorched the earth. She can't get a reference. She can't get rehired. If this influencer thing fails, which it will, she is unhireable in her field. Miley started crying. It was that fake hyperventilating cry she used to do when she wanted to get out of doing chores. She screamed that I was preying on her downfall and that I wanted her to be miserable. Mom immediately rushed to hug her, looking at me like I had just kicked a puppy. Mom said, apologize to your sister, Colby. She is brave for chasing her dreams. I stood up and told them I wasn't giving her a single cent. I told Miley she could have the $8,000 if she signed a legally binding contract putting her car up as collateral. The room went silent. Miley looked at me with pure hatred. She said, you would take my car? How am I supposed to go to content shoots? I said, take the bus. It is good for building character. I walked out of the house while Mom was yelling that I was being cruel. I got into my car and just sat there for a minute, shaking. I felt like I was the only sane person left on earth. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Talia, Miley's friend. It said, hey Colby, Miley is really upset right now. I think you should just Venmo her, like $2,000 to calm her down. She is really stressed about her rent. I blocked Talia immediately. I thought I had drawn a line in the sand, but I underestimated how far Miley was willing to go. A few days later, I was at work, trying to focus on some code, when my doorbell camera notification popped up on my phone. I opened the app and saw Miley standing on my front porch. She had 2 massive grocery bags. She wasn't ringing the bell. She was just standing there looking at the camera. I used the 2-way audio and asked her what she was doing. She looked up, put on a sad face, and said, I bought these groceries for you. I know you work hard and probably don't have time to shop. I just wanted to do something nice to show you. I am serious about adding value to your life. I felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe she was actually trying. I told her I wasn't home, but she could leave them there. She said, oh well, I actually need a ride home. My Uber app isn't working for some reason. I sighed. I knew exactly why it wasn't working. I told her I couldn't leave work. She waited a beat and then dropped the act. She said, okay, well, can you just unlock the door remotely? I need to use your bathroom and maybe grab a water. It is really hot out here. I told her no. I told her I wasn't letting her in my house when I wasn't there. She got angry instantly, the sad act vanishing. She shouted at the camera, fine, I spent my last $100 on this organic food for you, and you are going to let it rot in the sun? You are a narcissist, Colby. She kicked the bags, and a carton of almond milk exploded all over my welcome mat. She stormed off, leaving the mess. I watched the footage back 3 times, trying to process the level of manipulation. She had spent money she didn't have to buy groceries, I didn't ask for, just to use it as leverage to get into my house or get a ride. I called Dad to tell him what happened, to warn him that she was spiraling. Dad just sounded tired. He said, son, she is just trying to connect with you. You should have just let her in. She is your sister. I realized then that I was completely on my own. They weren't going to stop her until she hit rock bottom, and they were trying to drag me down there with her to cushion the fall. I ordered a new welcome mat and deleted the footage, but I should have kept it. I didn't know it yet, but that was just a probe. She was testing my defenses, and since the direct approach didn't work, she was about to get a lot more creative and a lot more invasive. I went to sleep that night thinking the worst was over, but the invasion hadn't even started. My sister demanded I fund her creative journey after she quit her job, and when I refused to be her ATM, she decided to just seize my assets instead. 3 weeks of silence had passed since the grocery store incident, which in Miley time is basically a decade. I actually thought she had found a new victim, or maybe even a job, but I was living in a fool's paradise. I was sitting at my desk at work, deep in a sprint planning meeting, when my phone started vibrating off the table. It was a picture message from Miley. No caption. Just a photo of a bright orange eviction notice taped to the door of her apartment complex. Before I could even process it, a second text came through. It said, "The universe is testing me right now, Colby. My landlord is literally blocking my blessings because he does not understand the fluctuating cash flow of a creative entrepreneur. I am coming to yours for a few days until I manifest a new penthouse." I immediately typed back, "Absolutely not. Do not come here. Go to mom and dad's." I knew exactly what a few days meant in her language. It meant she was moving in until she died or I did. She left me on read. I called mom, but she didn't pick up, which was my second red flag. I tried to focus on my meeting, but my stomach was doing backflips. I checked my home security app, and the feed was dead. Offline. My heart dropped. I had just checked it that morning. I told my manager I had a family emergency and sprinted to my car. I drove home doing 20 over the limit, calling Miley the entire way. Straight to voicemail. I called Dad. He answered on the first ring, sounding guilty before I even said hello. I asked him why my cameras were offline and if Miley was at my house. He hesitated and said, "Look, son, she was hysterical. She was out on the street with her suitcases. We couldn't let her be homeless." I screamed at him, asking how she got in. He got quiet and said, "Your mother gave her the emergency key, the one we keep in the lockbox for fire safety." I felt like I had been punched in the throat. I hung up on him and pulled into my driveway. Her car, a beat-up Honda Civic that she refused to maintain because maintenance isn't aesthetic, was parked diagonally across my lawn. Not the driveway, the actual grass. The trunk was open, and it was empty. I walked to the front door, and my key didn't work. The lock was jammed or blocked from the inside. I pounded on the door, shouting her name. Nothing. I went around the back, and the sliding glass door was unlocked. I slid it open and stepped into my own living room, and the smell hit me first. It smelled like burnt sage and cheap perfume, thick enough to taste. My living room was a disaster zone. There were suitcases exploded everywhere. Clothes, shoes, ring lights, tripods. It looked like a Sephora had vomited on my couch. But that wasn't the worst part. I heard music coming from upstairs. My upstairs, where my home office is. I ran up the stairs, seeing scuff marks on the wall where she had clearly dragged something heavy. I pushed open the door to my office, and I actually stopped breathing for a second. My ergonomic chair was in the hallway. My dual monitor setup, which I use for my actual job that pays for this house, was unplugged and pushed onto the floor in a tangle of wires. In its place, on my desk, was her laptop and a massive microphone setup. She had literally glued with industrial adhesive acoustic foam panels to my freshly painted walls, not the removable command strips. Actual glue. She was sitting there with headphones on, speaking into the mic in her soothing influencer voice. She spun around when I slammed the door open. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. She pulled one headphone off and said, "Colby, do you mind? I am recording a podcast episode about toxic family dynamics and overcoming adversity. You are ruining the audio quality." I lost it. I didn't even know I could yell that loud. I told her to get out. I told her she had 5 minutes to pack her trash and leave before I called the cops for trespassing. She looked at me with this calm, condescending pity. She said, "Technically, I forwarded it yesterday. Also, Mom and Dad said I could stay as long as I needed to get back on my feet. You can't kick me out. That is illegal eviction." She was quoting laws she clearly saw on TikTok. I looked at my monitors on the floor. One of the screens was cracked. I pointed at it and asked her what happened. She shrugged and said, "It was in the way of my creative process. You can buy another one. You are rich. Besides, I need this room because the lighting is better for my aura. You can work from the kitchen table. It is better for your posture anyway." I grabbed her suitcase from the hallway and threw it down the stairs. It tumbled loud and fast, crashing into the front door. She stood up, screaming that I was assaulting her property. She pulled out her phone and started recording me instantly. She put the camera in my face and shouted, "Guys, look at this. My own brother is physically attacking me because he is threatened by a strong, independent woman building an empire." She was performing. It wasn't real fear. It was content. I swatted the phone out of her hand, and it hit the carpet. She gasped like I had shot her. She said, "That is destruction of property. That is a work tool. You are going to pay for that." I marched downstairs, grabbed her other bags, and tossed them onto the porch. She followed me, screaming that I was a monster. I told her that the emergency key was for emergencies, not for squatting. I demanded she give it back. She smirked and said, I lost it. Or maybe I swallowed it. Good luck sleeping at night knowing your sister is on the streets. I told her she wasn't on the streets. She was going to Mom and Dad's house, since they were the ones who authorized this invasion. She crossed her arms and said, I can't live there. Their Wi-Fi is trash, and the aesthetic is dated. It doesn't align with my brand. I need to be here. This is a modern space. It suits me. I went back to the office to assess the damage. The glue on the walls was still wet in some places, but in others, it had already set. I tried to peel a foam square off, and a chunk of drywall came with it. My heart sank. This wasn't just annoying. This was thousands of dollars in damage in less than 4 hours. I turned around, and she was standing in the doorway, holding my gaming headset. She said, Hey, can I borrow these? The audio on mine is kind of flat, and I need this podcast to sound crisp if I am going to get sponsors. The sheer lack of self-awareness was actually terrifying. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a resource to be harvested. I told her to put the headset down and get out. I picked up my phone to call the police, my thumb hovering over the dial button. She saw the screen and her eyes went wide. For the first time, the mask slipped. She said, Wait, you wouldn't actually call the cops on your own blood. That is social suicide. Think about what that would look like. I told her I didn't care what it looked like. I cared about my house. I hit the call button, and she lunged at me. She didn't hit me, but she grabbed my arm, digging her fake nails in. She hissed, If you call them, I will tell them you hit me. Who do you think they are going to believe? The crying girl or the angry man? I froze. I knew she was crazy enough to do it. She saw my hesitation and smiled. It was a predator's smile. She released my arm and smoothed her shirt. She said, That's what I thought. Now I am going to finish my episode. Do not interrupt me again, or I will start sharing some of your secrets with my followers. I don't even have secrets, but the threat was clear. She was holding my peace of mind hostage. She walked back into my office, sat down at my desk, and put my headset on. I stood in the hallway, bleeding from where her nails had broken the skin, realizing that my parents had just armed a terrorist and sent her to my location. I needed a strategy, and I needed it fast, because brute force wasn't going to work on someone who weaponized victimhood like a pro. Living with Miley was like being trapped in a psychological horror movie directed by a teenager with a maxed-out credit card and zero impulse control. For 4 days, my house ceased to be a home and became a content factory. Every surface was covered in ring lights, tripods, and half-drunk iced coffees that were apparently props for her morning routine videos. I was sleeping with my bedroom door locked and my wallet under my pillow, but evidently I wasn't paranoid enough. The air was thick with tension and the smell of expensive hairspray. She had taken over the living room, the kitchen, and my office, which was now strictly off-limits to me, because my vibe apparently threw off the white balance of her shots. I was eating a bowl of cereal over the kitchen sink like a prisoner in my own house because the dining table was currently being used to stage a what's-in-my-bag photo shoot featuring items she had definitely stolen from our mom's closet. I was trying to work from my laptop on the patio furniture in the backyard, praying the Wi-Fi would hold out, when my phone vibrated with a notification that made my blood run cold. It was a fraud alert from my bank. A charge of $2,400 had just been approved at a high-end camera store downtown. I stared at the screen, my brain trying to process the number. $2,400. I hadn't bought anything. I hadn't even left the house. I checked my wallet, which I thought was safe in my back pocket. My primary credit card was gone. I felt a surge of adrenaline that made my hands shake. I didn't even close my laptop. I just stood up and marched back into the house. I found Miley in the living room. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by packaging. She was holding a massive, sleek camera lens, turning it over in her hands like it was a religious artifact. She was filming herself with her phone propped up against a vase. She looked up when I walked in, her face lighting up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She put a finger to her lips and whispered, "Shh, I am filming the unboxing ASMR. Do not ruin the audio." I walked over, reached down, and snatched the lens out of her hands. She shrieked like a banshee. She scrambled up, grabbing at my arm. She yelled, "Give that back. That is essential equipment. You are going to scratch the glass." I held the lens over my head and asked her, voice trembling with rage, where my credit card was. She didn't even look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I was interrupting her focus. She rolled her eyes and pointed to the coffee table. My card was sitting right there, next to a half-eaten croissant. She said, "Relax, Colby. I just borrowed it for a sec." My card was acting weird, probably because of the limit, and this was a limited-time deal. I needed the G-Master lens for the bokeh. You can't get that cinematic depth of field with the kit lens. It is literally an investment in our future. I stared at her. I asked her what she meant by our future. She sighed, like she was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. She said, "When I blow up, I am going to pay you back double. Think of it as a bridge loan." I am doing you a favor, really. It helps your credit utilization or whatever. I told her that this was credit card fraud. I told her that stealing my card and spending $2,000 was a felony. Her face fell. Not because she was sorry, but because she realized I wasn't buying her delusion. She crossed her arms and said, "Wow. You are really going to use the F word? Felony? For a family transaction? That is so dramatic. I am your sister, not a stranger." I told her I was calling the police. I pulled my phone out and started dialing. She panicked. She lunged for the phone, but I sidestepped her. She screamed, "No, you can't. It will ruin my brand. If I have a mugshot, no luxury brand will work with me." She pulled out her own phone and hit speed dial. She put it on speaker immediately. It was Mom. Miley started sobbing instantly, 0 to 100 in a split second. She wailed, "Mom, Colby is calling the cops on me. He is trying to send me to jail because I bought a camera lens to follow my dreams." I heard Tamara's voice crackle through the speaker, high-pitched and frantic. She said, "Colby? Colby, put the phone down. Do not call the police. Are you crazy? She is your sister." I shouted at the phone, telling Mom that Miley stole my credit card and spent $2,000 on a lens she can't afford. I told her this was theft, plain and simple. Dad's voice came on the line next. He sounded exhausted. He said, "Son, listen to me. We will pay you back. Do not file a police report. A criminal record will follow her forever. She made a mistake. She is just passionate. Just let us handle it. We will transfer you the money next week when my dividend check clears." I looked at Miley. She wasn't crying anymore. She was smirking. She knew she had won. She knew that as long as Mom and Dad were willing to bail her out, she was untouchable. She whispered, "See? They get it. They support the vision." I felt sick. I felt like I was the one going crazy. I told Dad that if they paid me back, that was fine, but she had to leave. Today. Right now. Mom started crying on the other end. She said, "Colby, you can't kick her out. She is fragile right now. If you kick her out, she might do something drastic. Please, just let her stay until the end of the month, just until she gets her feet under her." I hung up. I couldn't listen to it anymore. I looked at Miley, who was reaching for the lens again. She said, "Okay, so since they are paying for it, can I have it back? I need to finish the B-roll before the sun goes down. The lighting is perfect right now." I looked at the lens, then at her. I felt a cold resolve settle in my chest. I told her no. I told her I was returning it. She gasped. She said, "You can't. I already posted the teaser on my story. People are expecting the review." I told her I didn't care about her story. I told her that if she touched my wallet, my computer, or my keys again, I wouldn't call the cops. I would call her old boss and tell him exactly why she really quit. And then I would post the security footage of her breaking into my house on her own TikTok page. Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked actually scared. She stepped back. She said, "You are a monster. You are literally sabotaging me on purpose because you are jealous that I have the guts to chase a dream and you are just a corporate drone." I walked out of the room, taking the lens and my credit card with me. I went into my bedroom, locked the door, and pushed a dresser in front of it. I logged into my banking app and froze every single card I owned. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, realizing that my parents had just bought her more time to destroy my life. They thought they were keeping the peace, but they had just declared war. And the worst part was, Miley didn't think she stole anything. In her head, she was entitled to my money because she was the main character, and I was just an NPC, meant to facilitate her storyline. But the script was about to change. I was done playing the supportive brother. If she wanted a villain, I was about to become the best one she had ever seen. The smear campaign started the next morning, and honestly, I should have seen it coming. I didn't wait for permission this time. I waited for her to leave. Miley had a collaboration scheduled with Talia at some aesthetic coffee shop downtown, something about filming a day in the life of a CEO. Vlog. As soon as I saw her beat-up Honda Civic back out of the driveway, I moved with the precision of a military operation. I didn't even bother with suitcases this time. I grabbed heavy-duty black garbage bags from under the sink and started sweeping through the house like a tornado. I cleared the living room first, tossing her ring lights, her tripods, and her vision boards into bags without a second thought. I went upstairs to my office, which still smelled like her cheap vanilla vape juice, and stripped the room of every trace of her existence. I peeled the remaining acoustic foam off the walls, not caring about the paint I was stripping with it. I found her stash of props, my expensive noise-canceling headphones, my spare car keys, and a stack of mail she had hidden in my desk drawer. I hauled everything to the curb. It looked like trash day, but it was just an exorcism. I called a locksmith and paid him an emergency call-out fee of $400 to be there in 20 minutes. He looked at the pile of bags on the lawn, and then at me, sweat-drenched and shaking, and he didn't ask a single question. He just changed the tumblers on the front and back doors and handed me a shiny new set of keys. I tipped him $50 just for being fast. When he drove away, I sat in my living room in silence for the first time in weeks. I locked the deadbolt. I checked the windows. I felt safe, but safety is an illusion when you are dealing with a narcissist with a Wi-Fi connection. Miley came back 2 hours later. I watched on the security camera feed as she tried her key. It didn't turn. She jiggled it. She tried it again. Then she looked at the pile of bags on the curb, and the realization hit her. She didn't scream. She didn't pound on the door. She just stood there, staring at the camera lens with a look of pure, unadulterated malice. She took out her phone, typed something rapidly, and then got back in her car. She didn't even take her bags. She just drove away. That should have been my first clue that she had moved past the tantrum phase and into total war. The notification hit my phone at 8:30 that night. I was trying to decompress with a frozen pizza when my phone buzzed. It was a text from a coworker, Sarah, who I barely talked to outside of Slack. It just said, "Hey Colby, are you okay? I just saw this on my For You page. It looks really bad." My stomach dropped through the floor. I opened TikTok, and there it was. Miley had posted a 3-part series titled Surviving My Abuser, Why I Am Homeless Tonight. I clicked on it, my hands trembling. The video started with Miley sitting in her car, parked in a dark parking lot. The lighting was terrible, purposefully so, to make her look more vulnerable. She had no makeup on, her eyes were puffy, and she was visibly shaking. She looked into the camera and whispered, "I didn't want to make this video. I really didn't. I wanted to protect my family. But tonight my older brother, who I have looked up to my whole life, physically threw me out on the street because he didn't approve of my career choice." I stopped breathing, she continued, tears now streaming down her face. Fake tears, I knew, but they looked real enough to the internet. He has always been controlling. He screams at me. He breaks my things. Today, he crossed a line. He locked me out and stole my equipment. That camera lens I saved up for months to buy, he took it. He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he would destroy me. I have nowhere to go, guys. I am sleeping in my car tonight. The caption read, "Please help. I am scared. #toxic family, #narcissist abuse, #homeless, #survivor." I scrolled to the comments. There were already 4,000 of them. OMG queen. I am so sorry. Drop his at We Ride at Dawn. This makes me so sick. I hope you are safe. Where does he work? We need to call his job. It was a mob, a digital lynch mob, and Miley had just given them the rope. She hadn't named me directly in the video, but in the comments, she had accidentally liked a comment that asked if my name was Colby. That was all they needed. Within an hour, my Instagram was flooded with death threats. People were commenting on photos from 3 years ago, calling me a monster, an abuser, a thief. My LinkedIn notifications were going haywire. Strangers were viewing my profile. Then, the emails started. Not to my personal email, but to my work email. "Do you employ this abuser? Fire Colby immediately, or we will boycott." They were tagging my company's official Twitter account. Miley had weaponized her audience of aspiring influencers and drama addicts, and they were dismantling my life in real time. I called Mom. I needed her to tell Miley to take it down. I needed her to tell the truth. Mom answered on the first ring, and she was crying. "Colby, what have you done?" She sobbed. "Why did you lock her out? She is sleeping in a parking lot. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" I screamed into the phone. "She is lying, Mom. She is not sleeping in a parking lot. She is probably at Talia's. And she is telling the internet I abused her. Do you know people are emailing my boss right now? I could lose my job." Mom didn't even hear me. She just said, "You provoked her, Colby. You know how she gets when she feels cornered. You should have just let her stay. Now look what happened. You need to apologize. You need to go pick her up and bring her home before something happens to her." I hung up. I couldn't believe it. Even now, with my career on the line, I was the villain. I checked the video again. It had hit 100,000 views. Miley had pinned a comment with her Venmo saying, "Anything helps for a hotel tonight." I checked the timestamp. It was posted 10 minutes ago. She was crowdfunding her homelessness while actively destroying my reputation. Then my phone rang. It wasn't Mom. It was my boss, David. It was 9 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. He never called this late. I stared at the screen, terrified to answer. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. "Colby, we need to talk first thing in the morning. HR has been receiving some concerning messages. Please do not come into the office tomorrow until we speak." I sat there in the dark, the blue light of my phone illuminating the empty living room. I had secured the house, but I had left the gates wide open for her to burn it down from the outside. She didn't want a place to stay anymore. She wanted revenge. She wanted to be the victim so badly that she was willing to make me a criminal to do it. but she had made one critical mistake. In her rush to play the victim, she had forgotten about the receipts. She thought I was just a boring tech bro who would roll over to save his job. She forgot that my entire job is data, and I had backups of everything. I opened my laptop. I wasn't going to sleep. I had a smear campaign to dismantle, and I was going to do it with the same cold, hard precision I used to clear out her trash. If she wanted a story time, I was going to give her one. But mine wouldn't be filmed in a dark car with fake tears. Mine would be in 4K, and it would have citations. I woke up at 5 in the morning. Not that I had really slept. The adrenaline was still pumping through my system like battery acid. I had a Zoom meeting with David in HR at 9, which meant I had exactly 4 hours to save my career. I didn't waste time making coffee. I sat down at my custom-built PC, the one Miley had tried to pawn off as her own editing rig, and I opened Premiere Pro. I wasn't a video editor by trade, but anger is a hell of a motivator, and I was about to drop the most heavily cited dissertation on narcissistic collapse the internet had ever seen. I pulled the SD card from my home security system first. I had terabytes of footage. I had her breaking in through the back door. I had her screaming at me in the kitchen. I had her admitting she stole my credit card because she felt entitled to reparations for my lack of support. I started building the timeline. I titled the project file, The Truth. I didn't want to use clickbait. I wanted to use forensic evidence. I started with her homeless video. I put it side by side with the security footage from my driveway, timestamped exactly 10 minutes after she drove away. In her video, she claimed she was sleeping in her car. In my footage, zoomed in on her license plate as she sat at the end of the street. You could clearly see her friend Talia pull up in her BMW. You could see Miley transfer her trash bags of clothes into Talia's trunk. You could see them laughing, high-fiving, then driving off toward the city center. I cross-referenced the timestamp with a screenshot of Talia's Instagram story from that same night, tagged at the W Hotel, with the caption, "Girls' night out with my ride or die." She wasn't homeless. She was ordering room service while I was getting death threats. Next came the financial records. I screenshotted the fraud alert from my bank, $2,400 for the Sony G Master lens. I overlaid that with the text messages from Mom begging me not to press charges because Miley didn't mean it. I included the audio from the kitchen camera where Miley literally said, "It helps your credit utilization. Think of it as a bridge loan." The audio quality was crisp. You could hear the entitlement dripping from every syllable. I redacted Mom's phone number, but I left Miley's handle visible. If she wanted to be a public figure, she could deal with public scrutiny. The final nail in the coffin was the abuse claim. I uploaded the clip of me throwing her out. It showed me calmly placing bags on the curb. It showed me locking the door. And then it showed her, 5 minutes later, pounding on the door, not in fear but in rage, screaming, "I am going to ruin you, Colby. You will be sorry you ever crossed me." It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a tyrant who had lost control of her subjects. I exported the video in 4K. It was 12 minutes long. I didn't add music. I didn't add a voiceover. I just put a black screen at the end with white text that read, "I have filed a police report for credit card fraud and identity theft. I have also filed a restraining order. Any further contact will be handled by my attorney." I hit upload on YouTube and titled it simply, "Response to @MileyVibes Allegations." I posted the link on my Twitter, tagged my company, and sent the file directly to David in the HR rep. Then I waited. The meeting with David was the longest 30 minutes of my life. He looked tired. The HR rep looked skeptical. They had seen the emails. They had seen the boycott hashtags. I told them to watch the video before they made a decision. David said, "Colby, we need to protect the company's image. This is a mess." I told him, "The mess is about to be cleaned up. Just watch it." By noon, the tide hadn't just turned, it had evaporated. My video had 50,000 views, then 100,000, then 500,000. The internet loves a witch hunt, but they love an exposed liar even more. The comments on Miley's homeless video went from "Stay strong, queen" to "This is actually disgusting" in record time. People were dissecting her fake crying. They were finding holes in her story that even I had missed. One user pointed out that in her homeless car video, you could see the reflection of a hotel valet stand in her sunglasses. Another user found the exact price of the lens she stole and realized it cost more than most people's rent. The hashtag changed from #JusticeForMiley to #MileyIsOverParty. My phone started blowing up again, but this time it wasn't threats. It was apologies. "Hey man, sorry I called you an abuser. I didn't know the context." "Dude, your sister is psycho." Press charges. Then the calls from family started. Mom called 6 times in a row. I ignored them all. Then Dad called. I picked up, ready to fight. He sounded breathless. "Colby, take it down. You have to take it down. Miley is having a panic attack. She can't breathe." People are doxing her location at the hotel. Talia kicked her out because her comments were getting flooded. You have destroyed her. I felt a cold, hard knot in my stomach, but it wasn't guilt. It was relief. I told Dad, I didn't destroy her. She destroyed herself. I just turned on the lights. If she didn't want people to know she was a liar and a thief, she shouldn't have lied and stolen. Dad shouted, she is your flesh and blood. You are ruining her future over a camera lens. I laughed. I actually laughed. No, Dad. I am saving my future. She tried to get me fired. She tried to ruin my life because I wouldn't fund her cosplay career. This is what accountability looks like. Get used to it. I hung up and blocked his number too. I went to check on Miley's TikTok account. It was gone. User not found. She had deactivated. But the internet is forever. Re-uploads of her video, and my response were already circulating on Twitter, gaining millions of impressions. The drama channels had picked it up. A popular commentary YouTuber with 3 million subs had already posted a video titled "The Most Entitled Sister in History Just Got Exposed." I watched it. He broke down every lie, every manipulation, every gaslight. He called her a textbook narcissist and praised me for keeping receipts. I sat back in my chair, the silence of the house finally feeling like peace instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop. David emailed me at 4 p.m. We have reviewed the evidence. Your employment is secure. Take the rest of the week off to handle your family matters. We are sorry you had to go through this. I closed my laptop. It was over. The siege was broken. But I knew Miley. I knew that deactivating her account wasn't the end. It was a tactical retreat. She wouldn't learn from this. She wouldn't apologize. She would just rewrite history again, this time with herself as the martyr of a misogynistic internet mob. But that was fine, because now everyone had the manual on how to deal with her. I poured myself a drink and watched the sunset, thinking I had finally won. I didn't realize that a narcissist with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous animal on the planet, and she had one last desperate play to make, one that wouldn't happen online, but right on my front lawn. My sister demanded I fund her creative journey after she quit her job, but the finale of her little reality show wasn't streamed on Twitch, it was broadcast live to my entire neighborhood. I was sitting in my living room, still riding the high of watching her follower count plummet in real time, when the silence was shattered by what sounded like a car crash in my driveway. I checked the monitor, and sure enough, the Honda Civic was back, but this time it was flanked by my parents' SUV. Miley wasn't alone. She had brought reinforcements. I didn't even wait for them to knock. I walked out to the front porch, phone in hand, recording everything. Miley looked like a wreck. Her eyes were red, her mascara was running, and she was wearing sweatpants that looked like they hadn't been washed in a week. But the look on her face wasn't defeat. It was pure, unadulterated rage. Mom was holding her arm, looking terrified, while Dad was marching up the walkway with a face like thunder. Miley screamed. The second she saw me, she pointed a shaking finger at my face and yelled, "You ruined everything. You literally destroyed my brand. Do you know how much money I lost today? 3 sponsors pulled out. 3. You owe me damages, Colby. You owe me for lost potential earnings." I leaned against the doorframe and told her that I didn't owe her anything except maybe a bill for the locksmith. I told her that sponsors pull out when they realize their talent is a liability, and that is on her, not me. Dad stepped in then, getting right in my face. He said, "Listen to me, son. You have taken this too far. You publicly humiliated your sister. You need to issue a retraction video right now. You need to say you lied, or so help me God. We are done." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw a man who was so afraid of his daughter's tantrums that he would throw his son under the bus just to keep the peace. I told him that I wasn't retracting anything because it was the truth. I told him that if he wanted to be done, we could be done. I had the receipts, I had the police report, and I had the moral high ground. Mom started crying, that high-pitched wail that usually made me cave, but today it just sounded like noise. She sobbed. "Colby, please. She is suicidal. She has nowhere to go. Talia kicked her out. We can't have her at the house because of the Homeowners Association rules about long-term guests. You have to take her in. She is your family." I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. I asked Mom if she really just said the HOA was more important than her daughter's mental health. I asked her why Miley couldn't stay in her old room. Mom froze, realizing she had slipped up. The truth was, they didn't want to live with her either. They knew she was a nightmare. They just wanted to dump the problem on me, because I was the path of least resistance. Miley saw that Mom was losing the argument, so she decided to go nuclear. She lunged at me. She actually tried to tackle me on my own front porch. She was screaming that she was going to smash my phone, that she was going to burn the house down. I sidestepped her, and she crashed into the porch railing. She didn't get hurt, but she screamed like she had been shot. She fell to the ground, kicking and screaming, having a full-blown toddler meltdown at the age of 24. Neighbors were coming out of their houses now. Phones were out. The lady across the street, Mrs. Higgins, who usually only comes out to water her hydrangeas, was filming the whole thing. I looked at Dad and said, "Congratulations, Leland. You wanted to keep this private? Now it is on the Neighborhood Watch Facebook group." Then, the sirens started. I hadn't called them this time. Mrs. Higgins had 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing. The officers walked up the driveway, looking tired already. Miley immediately switched gears. She stood up, wiped her face, and tried to pull the damsel in distress card. She ran toward the officers, crying, "Officer, thank God. My brother assaulted me. He pushed me down the stairs." The older officer didn't even blink. He looked at me, then at the camera in my hand, then at Mrs. Higgins across the street who was shouting, "That is a lie. She fell. I got it on video." The officer turned back to Miley and asked her to step back. He asked for ID. Miley started screaming that she was a public figure and that he was violating her rights. She refused to give him her name. She told him to Google her. It went downhill fast. When the officer tried to detain her for creating a disturbance, she slapped his hand away. That was it. They cuffed her. Right there on my lawn, in front of Mom and Dad, in front of the neighbors, and in front of the internet. Miley was screaming that she was going to sue the department, claiming her dad was a lawyer, which he isn't. He is an accountant. Dad tried to intervene, begging the officers to let her go, but they were done. They put her in the back of the cruiser. Mom collapsed onto the grass, sobbing. Dad looked at me with pure hatred and said, "Are you happy now? You sent your sister to jail." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "No, Dad. You did. You raised her to think she was above the law. You enabled this every single day of her life. This is the first time she has ever faced a consequence. You should be thanking me." They drove away to bail her out. I went inside and poured the rest of that bourbon down the sink. I didn't need it. I felt sober. I felt clean. I blocked Mom and Dad on everything: phone, email, social media. I called my boss and told him the situation was resolved. I slept for 12 hours straight. 6 months have passed since the Battle of the Front Lawn. The silence has been incredible. My credit score recovered. I bought a better security system. I even got a promotion at work because David was impressed with how I handled the crisis management. I haven't spoken to my parents, but I hear things through the grapevine. They had to take a second mortgage to pay for Miley's legal fees and her therapy retreat in Sedona. I saw Miley yesterday. I was at the mall, picking up a new suit for a wedding. I walked past a kiosk selling those overpriced phone cases with glitter on them. She was standing there, wearing a uniform polo that was 2 sizes too big. She wasn't filming. She wasn't curating. She was arguing with a teenager about a return policy. She looked tired. She looked normal. She looked up and locked eyes with me for a split second. I didn't stop. I didn't smirk. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. I saw the flash of recognition, the flash of shame, and then the flash of anger, but she couldn't do anything. She was on the clock. She was finally living in the real world, where if you don't work, you don't eat, and no one cares about your aesthetic. I got a text message this morning from an unknown number. It was short. It said, "Hey Colby, I know things are weird, but I am really in a bind. Can you spare $20 for gas? I promise I will pay you back next week." Mom and Dad cut me off. I looked at the message for a long time. I thought about the camera lens. I thought about the police on my lawn. I thought about the smear campaign. I thought about the years of manipulation. I typed out "new phone, who dis?" and hit send. Then I blocked the number, put my phone in my pocket, and went back to living my life, completely and utterly drama-free.